And on to the big story of the day. South Africa seems to be struggling to get back to pre-COVID levels when it comes to unemployment numbers. In the fourth quarter of 2019, just before the COVID-19 pandemic struck, South Africa had an unemployment rate of 29.1%. That changed in 2020 with 2 million people losing their jobs, and despite the COVID recovery in the past 2 years, this has not brought SA back to pre-COVID levels in terms of jobs. We just can't seem to shake off that COVID curse in terms of job creation, even when the country is creating jobs in 2022.
We have observed that employment has increased in 4 consecutive quarters in the year 2022. Firstly, we observed in the first quarter of 2022 that we recovered 370,000 jobs, followed by the second quarter, which recovered the most, 648,000 jobs. And of course, the third quarter, 204,000 jobs. And now, in the fourth quarter, we have recovered 169,000 jobs. Although we have made these recoveries in terms of gaining jobs as a country, we haven't gone back to the pre-COVID levels, because we will remember that by the first quarter of 2020, we were sitting at about 16.4 million people employed. And in the second quarter of 2020, at the highest levels of lockdown, we went on a slump by 2 million jobs, straight to 14.4 million jobs.
And we stay with that top story of the day. And according to FNB, the labor market has recovered since the last 3 months of 2021, with 1.6 million people getting jobs in the past 5 quarters. We speak to one of the economists about the developments in the jobless rate and the cause of why the economy cannot create jobs that are desperately needed, and that is Thanda Sithole, who is a senior economist at FNB. Thanda, thank you very much for your time this evening. Let's talk about something that is quite glaring in this particular set of data released by Stats SA. The unemployment rate having averaged 33.5% last year, lower than the average of 34.3% in 2021. Why were expectations this time around that the jobless rate would be higher than what we've seen today?
Thanks. Greetings to your viewers and listeners. So unemployment rate moderated slightly to around 32.7%, but the expectation was around 32.6%, so slightly higher than the expected forecast. But I think what is critical here is that this economy has managed to create jobs over the past 5 quarters. Around 1.6 million jobs have been created. However, the level of employment still remains below pre-pandemic levels by about 85,000 jobs. And that speaks to the nature of the delayed recovery in the employment sector. But overall, I mean in the labor market sector, but overall the economy has managed to create just over 1.6 million jobs over the past 5 quarters. And I think that needs to be seen as positive.
Thanda, let's talk about the sectors that have driven the growth of employment in the past 5 quarters and what they tell you about if you see any changing trends in the job space, in the workspace, and about the readiness of the market to actually absorb new jobs.
Sure. So this the last quarter 4 jobs growth were largely led by the finance, transport, as well as the trade industry. Within the trade industry, we understand, speaking to our colleagues at Stats SA, that most of the jobs there were largely created within the restaurant and hotels sector, while also the retail trade sector created some jobs, and those jobs were largely linked to the outlets that were started by Shoprite in the fourth quarter of last year. So you see those job numbers coming through from that sector. But within the finance sector, which also led this job growth in the fourth quarter, the jobs there were largely created within other businesses sector, which largely is your focus. The transportation sector was largely supported by the services sector within the product transport sector.
And let's talk about the labor force participation rate. It went up 0.2% in quarter 4 to 58.5%. Why is this an indication that South Africa's labor market is not creating enough employment?
Sure. So this economy is a low growth economy, right? And our estimate is that the economy will need to grow by about 3.5%, at least 3.5%, sustainably to create meaningful jobs. So with our forecast of around 0.4% this year in terms of GDP growth, from 2.5% estimate for last year, I think that's too low. And even if you look at the Treasurer's latest projections over the forecast period, averaging 1.4%, which is 0.2 percentage point lower than their forecast at the medium-term budget, those growth forecasts are too low to help this economy create more jobs. We think that we will need this economy to grow by about at least 3% on a sustainable basis for us to be able to make a significant improvement on the labor market.
Now that we know that it's been a long time, Thanda, since the South African economy grew at 3% per year, this year, 2023, what are your expectations in terms of employment outlook, taking in mind that these higher levels of load shedding and the impact that they can have on job creation and economic growth?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, this economy is facing a lot of headwinds, both from a domestic perspective and from a global perspective. From a global perspective, economic activity is moderating. And then domestically, the biggest risk to economic activity is the persistent load shedding at higher levels of intensity, which is estimated to affect all the sectors across the economy. And so that is the major constraint to the economy. But over and above load shedding, other issues such as the elevated cost of doing business, constraints related to logistics, roads and rail, ports as well as ports, will need to be also tackled for this economy to start growing at healthy rates. If you look at the upside scenario that was presented by National Treasurer, which assumes that all the interventions related to electricity crisis are addressed. Even with those interventions, if they are fully addressed, economic growth is expected to average around 1.8% over the medium term. And still, that is significantly below the 3.5% that we require for this economy to create more jobs. So we need to take it not only load shedding, but other issues related to the transportation cost, the cost of doing business, as well as the constraints related to ports and rail that this economy is experiencing. But also over and above that, we'll need to improve service delivery at the community level. We will need to ensure that we are able to fight crime so that we'll be able to attract more investment that will be able to help this economy create growth.
Certainly, there won't be any bullet to the head approach on this one. It's a multifaceted approach when it comes to dealing with the lack of jobs in South Africa. Thanda Sithole, FNB Senior Economist, thank you very much for your time.